Hey everybody, my name is Nick with Torq Lite, and today we're here to talk about the square drive tool. Square drive tools are great. They work with sockets. Their sockets are affordable and easy. These tools are meant to be pretty durable, but they do need to be serviced, cleaned, taken apart. A couple things that need to be checked out to make sure that it's going to keep working and operate at its peak performance. So we'll get started and we'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so we got our SU3 on the table here. We're going to take it apart, disassemble the drivetrain mechanisms, and put it back together. It's very simple. I think it only requires these two tools. First thing I'm going to do is remove our reaction bar, set it off to the side, and then the very first step is going to be to remove two screws here and one on the bottom to get this shield off. That's going to expose the drivetrain. Train shield can come off. And there's one screw, there it is right there. That screw acts as a retainer for this square drive as it goes through. And it isn't tight, it's actually put on there all the way and then stops. We go back 1/4 turn, that's what helps it slide. All right, so you don't need to remove it all the way. Just turn it while you're sliding it through and you'll feel it let go. And it can stay in there. The square drive is gonna come out. And then right now, this whole thing is going to attach. You shouldn't have to manipulate this latch and paw handle, but sometimes I hold it still. Sometimes it has to be stroked out. Some tools don't. This one, it is stroked out. You see the body comes out. It is spring loaded, so be careful. And this is the body train, and that's the body cavity. The only other two parts that are external that aren't a part of the cylinder are these bushings. And then this latching paw, which you can see in here, and it is spring loaded. So take a look at it. It looks good. I'm not going to take it out because it's in good shape. You're going to examine your drive bushings. You're looking for any signs of wear, any chips, any damages. This one's brand new, so you don't see any of that. And then you look at your drivetrain. This is what we call the drivetrain. This is all the internal mechanisms of our gear. These are called drive plates. There's two of them. And when you take it apart, this is the gear and the pawl mechanism. The pawl is spring loaded and it's designed to turn, push that thing back down into position as it ratchets. So when you take it off, you hold your pawl back, lift your gear out of the way, and then you release your pawl, get your spring, your pin, and your pawl all at once. Now we have all of our parts laid out. I'm going to go through with some spray cleaner and a rag, and I'm going to clean it, and I'm going to show you what I look for, what we look for when we're cleaning tools. On the drive gear, I'm investigating teeth. I want to see if the teeth have any evidence of damage. They should all look the same. They shouldn't look chipped. They shouldn't look damaged. You might have impressions, you might have marks, but nothing you could feel if you were to rub your hand across it. So this gear's good. I'm also checking these circles here, these fits, to make sure that they're smooth, so that when they go into my drive plates, they spin freely. Drive plates, again, checking for burrs. I'm checking this inside fit to make sure it's smooth. You can measure this to make sure that it's still concentric. Do the same thing over here, and there's one other thing I want you guys to look out for. This cavity, where the spring goes, where the pin goes, this pin should not be full of grease and lubrication. It's a blind hole, and if you fill it full of grease and lubrication and then stick your pin in, it creates a vacuum, and the vacuum wants to push the pin out, and that can be a problem when you have these two things spreading apart. So, word to the wise, don't fill that hole full of lubrication. We'll go through that in a second. Again, the pawl, same thing. We're checking this fit, we're checking that flat, we're checking this pin in here. We want to make sure that this pin can move in and out easy. Shouldn't rattle around, it should just spin, and it does. Okay, the square drive, this is the part the socket attaches through. This goes through the gear. This is critical. All the load gets put onto here. We want to make sure we don't see any cracks. It usually happens, it might be sideways because if the square drive is allowed to kind of back up out the way because the socket isn't pinned. That can happen. So we want to make sure there's none of that. We want to make sure this isn't mushroomed up here. We want to make sure it's not twisting to where this right here might look like it's twisted along these flats. Any damages like that, there might be indicators of tool failure. So once that's all done, we're going to start to lubricate it, put it back together. It doesn't require any more tools than it did when we put it together. And we're going to put, again, light lubrication on these faces and in this fit. Light lubrication, thin film, that's all you need. Take your pin, put it through your dry pawl, and install it into the dry plate that has the dry plate shield, because that's what's going to hold your pin. Slide this out the way, see if I can move this around so you can see it a little better. We're going to put this pin in that pocket and in this pocket. And I'm just going to roll it back into place. And that's it. You heard it click, it's in there. Once I put the gear down, I am going to lubricate that slightly. Put that face down. And now, this is installed. When I come through here, I should be able to see very good engagement between this pawl and these gears. There shouldn't be a lot of space. It should look the same. If you go all the way around the gear, it should look the same. There's no spaces, it's not rattly, it's not loose. It just looks tight. And that's what we want. So once we have that, you put the other one on, and you can set this to the side. We're going to lubricate it before we put it in, but for right now, we're done. We're going to come back to these bushings. We are going to lubricate these gently and lightly. And we're going to install them in our body. From the inside, make sure they spin, make sure they don't rattle, make sure they're not loose. That's how they fit. Same thing, light film lubrication. This goes in. Same thing. They spin, it's easy, they're not rattling around, it's just good. Now we can go back to our drivetrain. Lubricate the outside because that's what bumps up against the inside of the body. We could do the inside of the body too. Just gets a little messy, but I had a guy tell me a long time ago I should use lubrication like I own stock in it. So I will. Okay, so now the next point to mention here is that I'm going to install this pin first into that slot right there on what was called the piston rod. Then I'm going to have to line up these bushings, one to the square drive, then to the gear, then to the other bushing. So it might be a little bit of a process, but we'll get started. In the pin, if you can see that, that's in the pin. Now, I'm going to make sure that I know where this keyway is, because that's where that set screw goes that we started with. And if I don't see it right now, I need to index this thing until I do. I think I can feel it with my finger, and there it is right there. You need to make sure that hole is lined up on this keyway, like that. So I'm gonna keep turning this until I find it, which I will in a second. So now I got one bushing and the gear lined up, and I've just got to go on about getting the other, turning this bushing until it's lined up, like that. Same wrench. And again, just to remind you, this is what stops the square drive from going all the way through. So I'm going to tighten it all the way down, like that. It's all the way down. The square drive doesn't move. And then I back off 1/4 turn. Now the square drive moves and it stops against that set screw. Now we've only got one thing left to do, and that's put this body shield back on, and this video will be done. This is slightly spring loaded, so I can give you a little bit of trouble. So you may have to use one hand to hold back on it. All right, this tool's done. It's been taken apart, it's been inspected, it's been cleaned, it's been lubricated. It's ready to go to work. Slide our reaction bar back on. Use the weight of the reaction bar to hold that little clip in, and we're done. All right, guys, that's it. You follow these steps, you keep your SU tools working in good condition. If there's anything else you want to see, any questions you have, you can put in the comments, you can send us an email, you can follow us at torqlite.com. Appreciate watching. Thanks a bunch.